Hey everyone, Evan Kaufman here. Welcome to our unique monthly webinar that we had. If you tuned in just a little bit ago, thank you for watching the VA Loan Crash Course that Spencer put on for us. But now we're going to have the monthly webinar, which this month is the military home buying process. This is one of my classic favorites, especially if we're gearing up for home buying coming this spring. We want to make sure we get the ducks in order. We've had quite a few registrants for this one. I know some are new and some are some old past clients who are excited to see you in here. That's telling me that you're gearing up, getting ready for the upcoming months to just remember a little bit about what those steps are. We're going to hit on those. Now, if you're a military family, wonderful. We're going to talk from that perspective, the military home buying process. If not, by chance, or a veteran, perfectly fine. This process applies as well to just the regular home buying process too. I'm just going to speak with it with some military acronyms and some military processes to it that we see all the time. Next slide, please. And the main reason there is because, again, my name's Evan Kaufman. Our whole business is centered around working with active duty military families. Now, where you might deal with some lenders who deal with VA loans, they might be 70 or so percent VA loans for veterans, 30% active duty. We're the inverse of that. We work primarily with active duty military families moving around the country. Of course, we work for a lot of veterans as well. I'm one myself. Most of the team is either a veteran or someone serving currently or had served before. So we understand that process as well, but we work so often with military families. We've even made it to where our basic understanding is that we work for active duty military home ownership. This slide here just really shows, hey, I do a lot of loans. Now, hopefully we've got enough of the folks who have registered now logged in here. So we're going to start getting into the whole process and discuss the home buying process along the way. All right, our objectives for today. We're going to talk about main military considerations that you want to take into account, especially if you happen to be PCSing right now, debating on buying versus renting. We'll touch on that briefly because we have whole other slides on it too. Then we'll go into that 10-step buyer roadmap. It's a sweet roadmap that I developed years ago, and we've also got a nice, easy PDF format all over on our site if you want it. Then we're going to go into some key term review, touch on some do's and don'ts, and then I'll end this out with a couple pointers on how to improve your home value if you happen to be trying to sell your current home, going and looking at buying a next one for your next move. Let's get into those military considerations. One big thing we point out too is we like to say we want to see our clients achieve what we like to call our client 20-year vision. Have a paid for, near paid for home by the time of retirement. Now, the only way to get there is to make sure you purchase strategically. We're unique. If working with us as a lender, we're not going to tell you buy every time. It depends. And because we work at most locations around the country, we're able to ideally give you a little more honest feedback on, hey, should I buy or should I rent? And we've boiled it down to something we call the timing recommendation. Now, really cool deal. We've been going with timing recommendation for all these years. And just last month, we rolled out something called a buy versus rent calculator that I talked about in our last webinar. And we've sent out some good emails on. So if you're curious and you want to get a more granular, detailed analysis of should I buy or should I rent, go ahead and look at calculators in the top corner on wevet.com and click the buy versus rent one. It's super detailed. Now, I put out a video on that. You want to watch that because you make sure you compare apples to apples as much as possible. But that calculator has proven our timing recommendation to be correct in most scenarios. The basics here are, do you intend on renting out your home in the long run? If the answer to that is yes, then you want to consider potentially buying. Why? Because the longer you hold the home, the better. And we really like to boil that down to 3 years. Do you see yourself holding the 3 years or longer? Now, if you don't want to rent the home out, we move on to question 2, which question 2 is simply, will you be at your home for at least 3 years or not? And they can really take all this and just condense it to, will you own the property for at least 3 years? If you say, yeah, Evan, I plan on owning it for 3 years, then oftentimes you want to consider buying. But if it's going to be less than 3 years, you might want to consider renting. Depends on your scenarios. We go into more detail on that. We just did that webinar last month, so you can go back and watch it. But the basics are that 3-year timing recommendation is pretty good. Some locations, it might stretch out to where when you run the numbers, it'd be better to own it for 4 or 5. Some places, it's just a year or 2 years. 3 years is usually the good place to look at. Now remember, the longer you own the property, the better and just more advantageous it could be to purchase. But you're here because you want to know the home buying steps. So you probably said, Evan, I plan on owning this for at least 3 years. So let's get into that. This is the 10-step buyer's roadmap. Now we're going to break this down because right now it's a really small font that you see on it, but it's 10 steps to saying, all right, I think I want to buy, Evan, what do I got to do? And it walks you right through to the end of getting the home and being in it. So let's look at this first grouping here. Number 1, obtain your financial pre-approval. Sometimes number 1 and number 2, we like to say are 1A, 1B because they can kind of be together or swap around a little bit. And number one, though, is to obtain that financial pre-approval where working with someone like us, ideally, or any lender that understands VA loans well, if you happen to be working with a VA loan, I want to see how much do I qualify for. This is taking into account my current housing situation and what the potential future one could look like. And in the end, we're able to help tell you, hey, like working with us, we have our 3+1 step process. Step one, we're going to do a pre-check call, make sure there's any red flags we got to work through. Number two, we're going to get you pre-approved or tell you what you need to do to be pre-approved. And step three is part of this where we call taking it home, bringing them all the way to closing. But in those first couple steps, we're going to figure out if there's anything that we got to work through that's unique. And then we're going to be able to tell you, here's an amount you're pre-approved for. And on top of that, if you start seeing homes that we're going to talk about here now in step two, if you start seeing homes with your agent, all of a sudden we can get you accurate numbers. So it's important to know what I can afford up front. Then step two is a real estate agent. So you've got your lender. Now we got to go figure out who's going to be my real estate agent. Getting a good real estate agent that understands military needs is essential. That's actually where we started with this whole business. I was selling real estate. We built a company then to help connect military families with military-focused real estate agents because we know that's an essential need. Now we just happen to have two different companies that cater to the same kind of need, helping active duty military families. One company through the loan that I run, we've at Home Loans, and then the other company, We've at Realty, to help connect with the agents. Use them together, use them separately, perfectly fine, but when together it can be really powerful because your first two steps to home buying should be making sure you get that team together, your lender and your agent together at once. Because that agent, think of it as they're your boots on the ground. Your lender, you want to make sure they understand the VA loan. It's the numbers, it's very specific. Does it really matter if they know all the street corners, everything else? Maybe, maybe not. But you really want to know they understand the VA loan. And the VA loan is a very unique loan type. Only about 1 in every 10 loans done. And for active duty, it's a fraction of that. Only about 2 or 3 loans out of all loans done are for military families that are moving. So it's important to get someone that gets that because it's a unique set of needs. And on the same side, you want an agent that really understands the area well. They're your local expert that you're working with in the area you're moving to. So you want to get them lined up. So you got now after step 2, you've got your lender where you can go, hey, I saw this home I like. What do the numbers look like? So I know if I can afford this and it's going to be comfortable with our budget. And then, oh, my agent, hey, Johnny, Sally, Sue, I'm going to call you up. Can you help get me a virtual showing of that home? Your team's together now. Because that's what leads us into steps 3, 4, and 5 here. Step 3 is to analyze your buyer's needs through buyer consultation. With us as a lender up front, we do that in that 3-step process. But with your agent, you're typically going to do that on one of your first couple of calls, where they're going to go over with you generally, what's the bedrooms, bathrooms, areas, bounce back and forth ideas. So you want to make sure that your agent and your lender, for that matter, understand your situation and have your needs analyzed. So at the end of this, at the end of step 3, this top bar, you've got your team put together, you know who you can go for numbers, and you know who you can go for understanding the area better. Now you're really ready to rock and roll. You want to do this before you're just looking at homes online. If you're looking at homes online, how many times have I heard people say, oh, I saw a home that I liked on Zillow or Realtor.com. I clicked the button for an agent, and it was sold, spun off somewhere, and it was so fast and so quick, it worked out, and it wasn't a deal that they really wanted in the end. Get your team together up front so you know where you can communicate. So when you see that home, you're not rushing and panic to get it all together. You've got your finances in order. You've got your agent who can help you go get the home and win it. So that's the whole point of the 3 steps up front. Now, you've got your team together. Let's roll into the next line. Step 4, you're going to select and view properties. This is the fun part, HGTV that you always see, right? Where, oh, we're going to go see these 3 or 4 homes and pick one. That's literally getting out there and viewing properties. You're going to do that through your real estate agent. And then we're very used to, as lenders, hey, you might send us a home that you're getting ready to offer on. You want to run some numbers on it. And we'll do that for you. Give you estimated monthly payments, cash to close, that kind of stuff. If you want to try to negotiate closing costs, you can do that then. And we can give you a rough idea of what it looks like. Again, only can happen if you did those first few steps and got them in order. But now it's that time to start looking. When you do those first 3 steps successfully, man, the step 4 can be a lot of fun, and the fun versions of HGTV can become a reality then. But let's say now you went out and you saw a bunch of homes, and you decided, hey, I like 123 Main Street. Well, now we're going to head there to step 5. Step 5 is writing the offer to purchase. This is where you'll typically work with your real estate agent to make sure you get that contract together and understand the clauses and everything that are in it. Because we're going to put together a contract and say, okay, here's what we want to offer the sellers. You've already got our pre-approval letter if you're working with us, so you already know you can forward it, and you got our letter saying, hey, we looked at all their financing, and so long as nothing goes wildly awry here, they're going to be good. So that gives you the strength to say, hey, we want to offer you this, and here's our lender saying we can get it done. And that's where you have your writing your offer, putting it together, and you submit that over to the sellers. Then we go to step 6. This can be really fast, or it can be a long, drawn-out process. You made that offer, you presented it to the sellers. Now you might have some back and forth, Or they might just tell you yes or no real quick. If it's a competitive home, has a lot of offers, you might just get back a yes or a no really fast. Because if they have a lot of offers, there's no real need to necessarily negotiate. If they have something that's significantly better, they don't want to lose it. But if there's no other offers on the table, they might go, hey, we want to negotiate a little bit. We might need a little longer to move in. We might need a higher price. So it's not always price driven. It could be other terms, such as the timeline to get an appraisal done, the timeline for them to move out. Maybe they want to negotiate that they can stay in for a week or two. That's step 6. That back and forth is typically you talking with your agent and your agent negotiating for you on the other end. So it's a back and forth that, again, it can be really fast, or sometimes it can be a drawn out process for a few days. But once you've come to settled terms, let's kick into the next slide here. So step 7, this is what we like to call a waterfall effect. Step 7 is where you presented that offer. You had a little bit back and forth. They accepted it. All parties signed. Woo, party. You think, hey, I got a contract. It's done. Not quite. Now we start the real work of what I like to call the waterfall effect. Step 7, you see it here, all those 3 things across the top on the screen, and then they waterfall down. 3 major things start to happen simultaneously. Number 1, you start getting your inspections lined up. You're going to get ready and order your inspections. Typically, you're working with your real estate agent to get that together. They might give you a list of inspectors. They might help you coordinate it, but they're going to go ahead and do those inspections. Once the inspections are done, you might have some issues that you need to work through. So you're going to resolve any issues. That could result in maybe a price change, a timing change, something that they need to do for work change. It could create a few new things. I like to say it reopens many negotiations within the contract time frame. That's inspections. That's typically going to happen within your first 1 to 2 weeks right there. Number 2, you're going to be working on your financing right away. This is where, for our end, we get the contract. Like when you get under contract and you send it to us, we're 1, very excited for you. Number 2, then, we're going to have that step 3 call I mentioned earlier, taking it home. We're going to have the call where we talk about your appraisal timeline, what the process looks like next for documentation, getting your insurance and everything together. And we're going to get that all done for you. So you can see it right there. We're going to make sure that we complete the credit verification and underwriting process. Of course, we can do credit up front, but the underwriting for the property and VA standards, so this property specific, we need to get that done. We'll order the appraisal. I like to say it's a double check on your value for the home. And then we're going to make sure your insurance gets lined up. You'll pick who it is. You might set up the quote. Then we'll make sure we get it bound and put together for you on the contract. And then you're going to get that final loan approval. That's our process through. Again, that can be anywhere from 1 week to 3 weeks, just depending usually on that appraisal and your timeliness at getting us back and forth information. Then number 3 there, which again, these all happen simultaneously, is the title escrow work. Up front, you're going to get your earnest money in. Some places of the country might call this good faith money or just a deposit. This is where when you made that offer, you might have said, oh, and hey, sellers, if we walk away for some reason outside of this contract, because that contract usually has a lot of clauses for like appraisal and stuff, then you get this money. Technically, earnest money in most states can be, or good faith deposit can be whatever they agree upon. So I've seen some unique ones there for not just cash and dollars, but 99% of the time it's dollars. So you say, hey, we'll give you this money if we walk away for some reason outside of the contract. But you need to get that usually to the title or escrow office, or sometimes to the real estate brokerage, just depending on what's in the contract. So you need to get that over to them. Then the title office or the escrow office is going to start opening up their look back on the title paperwork to make sure it's a clean chain of title, so that Sally, who's selling it to you, truly has the authority to sell it. They're going to start that process, which can take a couple weeks. So again, all of this starts simultaneously, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks usually. I like to say, hey, your first couple weeks of buying a home, you're going to feel like it's a rush. Most people, they'll close on about a 30-day timeline, so that first couple weeks is going to feel fast. And then the last couple weeks, sometimes people even wonder if they're buying a home, because we get those knocked out. And if you have a really good real estate agent with an inspector lined up for stuff and a good lender that's operating everything and the escrow company is on it, this happens smoothly. So that first 2 weeks, most of the work should be done. Now, once that one's complete and you've got it all wrapped up for it, we head on to step 8. And this is, like I said, the bottom row for us is getting everything, the fun part really, getting everything completed. Step 8 is you're going to make sure you get your funds transferred to closing. This usually looks like, for our end, like we're working with clients, is once everything's done and we get what we call the clear to close, we're going to balance with the title escrow office, meaning make sure the numbers are accurate and final, because we'll give you an estimate up front, but the numbers will slightly change. The date you close could change it. Your insurance could come in different. The title fees could adjust somehow. They just do. Like when the tax assessment comes in and there's some weird tax assessment, it wasn't the old stuff, it can adjust things. So we make sure we get that balance and finalized. You choose that you want to put more money down. I don't know, it can be multiple reasons. We get you the final numbers. Ideally, we're getting those to you a week ahead of closing so you can get ready. Sometimes though, if it's a fast close or some things just take longer, it could be a few days before closing. You just got to be ready. But the key is you're going to find out what your final number is, and then you're going to need to transfer those funds. And depending on the title or escrow office, typically it's a wire transfer most people choose to do. Sometimes a certified check, but you're going to get that money to the escrow title office. Then we're going to go to steps 9 and 10. If you wonder why aren't these together, it's because sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. So you're going to close on the property. That's step 9. That means you sign it, and typically that means you technically own the property. So that means that you're going to own the property then. That doesn't always mean though you get the keys. People will often ask, hey, do I get the keys when I sign? We usually say, ask your real estate agent, because they're going to know exactly what the back and forth was with the sellers, because sometimes there might be post-occupancy. The sellers might have negotiated in that they get a couple days to move out, sometimes even a couple weeks to move out. So you might close on the property, even own it, but you might not get the keys for a couple of weeks. That's what comes down to that negotiation part that we were talking about back in step 6. So you close on the property, you sign it, it's yours. Then step 10, that's where you take possession. When I say like possession, that means it's yours. Here's the keys. Bam, let's rock and roll. So that usually comes most scenarios. I don't know if I had to put a guess to it, 75, 80% of deals, probably 80, 85% of deals. That will happen usually on the same day that you're closing, except for some states where it might be delayed. You might get it a couple days later. But most scenarios, you're getting those keys the same days or very closely thereafter. So you're ready to rock and roll and move in. But the key is, it comes back to what was on that contract. So that's the whole 10 steps to it all. If we go ahead and click, there was roadmap takeaways from us. And again, if you like that 10 step and you want to see where it's at again, in our resources tab, we have that 10-step home buyer process. And again, this video, very similar to this video, is stored as well for us on the site, so you can go back and watch it anytime. It's probably actually a younger, better looking version of me, so you might like that one more. Now, roadmap takeaways. Key here is thinking ahead of the game. Most people that we work for are usually reaching out to us anywhere from 3 to 6 months in advance. We say you want to really start getting ready for that team, that first 2 team, the lender agent, 45 to 120 days ahead of time. And that's about right. So expect that you want to get ready 45 to 120 days before you're ready to close. A lot of people right now for us who are getting ready for this spring are reaching out now. People who are getting ready to try to buy a home in June, July, August, the early birds are starting to reach out now to get ready as well. Now that contract closing time frame, generally expect it to be anywhere from 15 to 45 days. What we often deal with is 21 to 30 days. For VA loans specifically, the national average is something like 43 or 45 days. We focus on them, and we focus on active duty military for PCSing, so that makes sure for our processes we're streamlining very quick with them. So our typical time for a clear to close on a VA loan is under 21 days. And if we need to, we can get them done real fast. So we've closed them in as little as 14 days. So if you need a quick close, it can be done. But most folks choose between 21 and 30 days. That's kind of the usual window that people choose to close on one. It gives you a little bit enough breathing time. I'm almost like the perfect timeline would be about 22, 23 days. That's enough time to get the initial underwriting done the first few days. You usually get your inspection done. If you get it done right away, you're comfortable with it, we'll order that appraisal. The appraisal usually has about 10 business days, give or take, depending on the state and location. We complete up and wrap up the underwriting. Title gets their stuff done. Bam. We're signing and funding this puppy around 23, 24 days. Very common, but again, 21 to 30 days is most often for us. Now, the VA loan itself is very powerful for military families. We'll touch on that some, and of course, we touch on it all over on our website for resources. The VA loan crash course that we just did before this is a good one to watch as well, or the VA loan masterclass. We go in detail for about another 10, 15 minutes is a good one. Now, the VA appraisal is something we want to touch on. It is not a substitute for home inspection. It is, fortunately, over the years now, that idea has gone away a little bit, which is good. But some people assume, oh, the VA inspector. There's really only a VA appraiser, and they do what they like to call a habitability check. They're going to look for minimum property requirements to make sure the home is okay for the veteran, but it's no substitute for home inspection. Just trust me. They're actually about to lighten that up here in the next couple months, which I think will be good for the seller side accepting VA loans, which will help. But it only more so goes into the camp of don't count on that VA appraisal being your inspection. It's no substitute for a third-party inspection. Now, get your team together up front. That's a big takeaway as well. That first bar on the 10-step process, getting your agent, getting your lender, getting your agent, and then getting your needs analyzed properly by both parties is very important up front. Be involved as well. How often do we get folks who just assume that we are the professionals at this, and the agent is, and by golly, in the end, I don't really like that house, but they liked it, they were excited for it. Look, I can advise you as best as possible on your options with the VA loan, or any loan for that matter, that we have our ability to work for you. We can talk financing. I can give you my advice on budgeting and everything else. But ultimately, you got to choose that yourself. And you got to be able to be involved in that process and can't just assume that we can select it for you. Nor do you necessarily want that long run. You want to make sure that you use us as professionals not to make the decisions for you, but to get quick, efficient advice so that you can move quickly. That's very important, but not abdicate everything. So you want to use us, use a quality professional, because that'll save you so much time. But it shouldn't just save you time, it should increase your knowledge and ability to make sure you have a deal that in the long run is going to be really good for you. So very big on being involved and listen carefully and ask questions along the way. Next, prioritize communication. Slow responses can kill a deal, and it can just make it to where, when I was talking earlier, like, hey, making sure sometimes comes down to just the speed of responses we get from borrowers and from clients. It's really important that we get you to make sure you respond quickly on things. If you don't, just know that could add to things. If we ask for a document and you get it to us a week later, well, don't be surprised if closing happens to get pushed back a week. Just part of it. So in that process, especially in those first couple of weeks of being under contract, prioritize the communication of your real estate agent and your lender. All right. Let's go over some key term reviews. I hit on a lot of things in that 10-step process, and I said a lot of buzzwords. Let's hit on those really fast. So some of the big ones: under contract. This doesn't mean the home's closed. This simply means that you got an accepted contract. This is that step 7 where the waterfall gets into place. And it's usually, like I said, 15 to 45 days. Most clients, 21 to 30. Earnest or good faith money. This is that concept of where you make the offer, you put some money with it, deal falls through for any reason outside of the contract that you pre-agreed to, then they could potentially get the money. The sellers could. Often I think it's negotiated between you and the seller via the contract and your agents. The next thing is a mortgage. Very simple. It's a loan obtained from a lender. So that's something that you ultimately take out from us to help purchase the home. The VA loan, that's the huge benefit, I would say, for military families, and we have a whole slew of other videos on it. The key there could be for active duty or for veterans, and for Guard and Reserve as well in most cases. The appraisal, think of it as your double check on value. Closing costs, these can mean a lot of different things, but it typically includes your taxes, your insurance, any lender fees expected to close, any title or escrow charges. From the buyer side, that can mean all those things, and from the seller side, it can mean a couple more things from it. That could be your real estate agent fees or anything else you might be paying. So for a buyer side piece, expect that to be, we put on here anywhere from 1.5% to 3%. I'd say now more like between 2% and 4%. Depending on areas. Some states, typically like your Northeast states and a few others, end up being more expensive, and especially depending on how their transfer taxes are handled. But a lot of your Midwest states and a decent number of Western states are much cheaper than that. They can actually push towards that 1.5% for closing costs for stuff. But just know that it includes, it's not like just a random fee or thing put in there. And you'll be disclosed in all instances, at least from our end, what closing costs comprise of. But as I like to say, closing costs on a loan, it's not necessarily always our charges. It's title, taxes, insurance. That's your big dog insurance typically, because you got to pay for a year of insurance up front. If you're buying a home in like Texas or somewhere in the Midwest, sometimes that's a pretty big amount, anywhere from 1 to 1.5% of the home's value. Usually less in other areas, but some areas it gets up pretty high. The escrow account. This can mean a couple of things. During closing, the escrow account means that's where you're going to open escrow, or you're going to send money to title in their escrow, and that's where all the money comes together to complete the closing. So the basics of it all, though, I think I wrote it on here, right? Third-party account where funds are held during a transaction. And it's also a third-party account that can mean holding taxes and insurance after closing. So during the contract process, if someone says, oh, we're opening escrow, we're sending money to escrow, or to title, we're opening title, we're sending money to title in escrow, that's where we, as a lender, will send our money. You will send any down payment if you had it, or any cash due at closing. The seller will send their payoffs and everything, and the escrow company or title company will handle breaking it all out. That's during contract. Post-contract, you have your escrow account that you've probably heard about, and you're like, oh man, My mortgage went up. Well, your mortgage technically doesn't go up. Like our principal and interest, if we fixed it for 30 years or 5 years, whatever it was, how many years, and you're in that window, that won't move. Your principal and interest won't move. It legally can't. But your taxes and insurance of the escrow account can. It literally will adjust every year depending on if they change. So that's your post-close escrow account where your taxes and insurance build up and then get paid out. We have servicers, as lenders, we have servicers who help take care of that along the way. You can elect to waive that if you want, but that's another story for another day. Contingency. Think of it this way. It's just a condition or requirement that you got to clear prior to close. And it can be used by your agent. It can be used by your lender. A lot of different people. Just know that effectively it's a hurdle I got to get over. That's it. Next. So do's and don'ts. So start as early as possible. Get pre-qualified or pre-approved. So you make sure you don't waste your time on anything for stuff. Make sure that you check your certificate of eligibility from the VA. I just put out a cool video because last week they announced that they put it on their app, which is pretty neat. So you can get your phone and get the VA app. I wouldn't have thought that. Being a veteran, I usually question how well the VA do things, but I got to give it to them over the last 5 years or so, 10 years even, since I got out, or as I was getting out, they started renovating a lot of stuff. It's gotten better and better. So you can check that now on your phone if you download the VA app, which is pretty cool. Or working with a lender like us, we have direct portal access. We can do it for you. Do your diligence on the home. Remember, that VA appraisal, if you're using a VA loan, is not a substitute for a home inspection. Do not overlook closing costs. That's something you want to take into account. And again, if we get you pre-approved up front, we can then get you realistic closing cost examples to expect. Do not assume the VA appraisal is your inspection, as I mentioned multiple times now for us. I say it multiple times, we get asked it often. Don't extend your budget to make sure or make big financial changes during the process of purchasing. You want to make sure that you keep that all together. And then lastly, what do we put on here? Don't assume VA loans are slow. Boy, is that true. Again, if you look online, sometimes people complain about, well, the VA loan is slow. Average close time, again, is like 40 plus days. Working with lenders who get it makes a difference. Our average VA close time of when we get that clear to close is under 21 days. We can make it and get it done for you if you need it even faster. Next. Okay, let's talk a little fun topic here. You're not like, all right, Evan, that got me pumped up. I'm ready to go buy this home, but I got to list this home. Let's touch on a couple good, easy, quick home improvement things that you can do at your current home that you're getting ready to sell. So like I say, there's 3 very simple ways to improve value. Things that I've applied to my own homes and home sales that we've done in the past as well. So the 3 big ones you're going to see there on the left: landscaping, curb appeal, the paint that you do, and the light fixtures and lights. And if you just think about that, you're like, wow, all those things I could probably do myself. You don't necessarily have to hire. You can, but there are those things I like to say have a very high return for the effort that you can put into them. So for example, painting. It costs quite a bit to have someone come paint your house, but it is a skill I would argue that most people can manage and handle themselves. You want to make sure you pick a good paint though. I will give it that. So make sure you pick a good paint. If you're curious what a good paint is, just look at some home magazines and pick the color that looks the nicest or most common one, because you want to keep it in trend with everything. But as long as you got the right color for it, it's relatively easy to paint yourself if you choose to do so. Same with landscaping, curb appeal. It's amazing what can happen with some bags of mulch. That first impression really matters. People are going to walk up to the door when you're listing it, and they're going to have their agent maybe fumbling, getting the keys, try to get in the house. And I know back when I was selling real estate, there were times where I might stand there for 5 minutes trying to get the keys. Oh no, it's not out. Calling the agent. And the buyers that we're looking at the house with, they might just be sitting there because we just came from another listing. There was no time to get it ready. So they're looking around, just waiting. They're standing on that porch. They're going to start noticing the cobwebs, the holes. Oh man, that ground looks pretty rough. Oh, what's that crack there? So it's important to make sure you get that front entryway as pristine as possible, because that's where people are first impression. It matters, makes a difference. Same with the paint going inside. Again, you can make sure that it's easy. What I put on there, again, the classic version of a home for a person to cut and color, which is pretty funny. Choose the right color for it, but it's one that can really dramatically change the look of your house. Same with those light fixtures. That's one of those things that showing so many homes back in the day for it, when there were good quality fixtures, it's amazing how many people said, oh man, that makes it pop. And especially the lights. And when I say lights, I mean like the light bulbs, noticing how big of an impact that makes. If you got a room with all dark tinted lights, change them out. It's amazing how that shifts the room. Now, I'd recommend that you probably do your light bulbs first and then paint, so you know what you're kind of looking at difference-wise, because you could paint your whole house and then put a different light bulb in and go, oh, that changed it up. that can swap, or go vice versa, right? Match your bulbs to what you got for your paint. But lighting, just the light bulbs themselves, can make a big difference. If you got only 2 out of 4 light bulbs working in a house, that itself can just make a big difference. That's probably the easiest ones. Change your light bulbs. But then changing the fixtures themselves can really help. That home was beautiful in 1990. It's still got a great look, great layout, wonderful wood floors, but it needs some new paint on those walls. And then, man, we got to change out all those old brass fixtures with some nice black ones, or stainless steel for classic. It's kind of internet style, always for forward sake. But it has really good, easy fixes. So hopefully it's some quick home improvement. Couple, not even thousands of bucks. I say you get away with even a few $100 on most homes, and you can really take it a long ways with some extra effort in there. So hopefully that helped you with some home buying step process, getting your home ready for selling it at the end. My name again is Evan Kaufman. Next steps for us, we have WeVet Home Loans. You want to get started on your VA loan, you see it right here on the screen. You can go to the website link, or you can snap that QR code. We'd love to get started for you to working on a VA loan. If you're looking right now and have a rate, by the way, that happens to be around 6% or higher on an old VA loan, reach out to us. Those VA streamlined refinances are crazy. And we're doing those for a lot of our past clients and folks that we've never worked for before, because it's a wonderful process that we have to help get those done. If that piqued your interest, you're like, what do you even mean by that? It means we could save you a lot of money if you got a rate that, again, around 6 or higher. And even if you're in the mid upper 5s, reach out so we can get you in our system to help make sure we track that for you, because we watch it specific to VA loans. Everyone else says they track. It's hard to track every loan type. We built a program specifically for VA loans. Now, on top of that, again, I mentioned earlier, a separate company, WeVet Realty, would love if you need to get connected with a real estate agent. They would love to help you, Marty and Shannon there, to get that taken care of for you. There's a QR code. But then lastly, our third pillar, so to say, is just the resources we have. If you want to learn some more, go to wevet.com/education. And we have a lot of good information out there for you to just soak in and take on, including the 10-step buying process as a little map picture. So thank you again for taking the time to watch us. I hope you have a wonderful day. It's a wonderful spring, summer for you as well. Take care.